So we're always looking for structure, even when there isn't structure. We will make stuff up. We call it MSU. People make shit up. And we do that instantly. We don't even know we're doing it. And then we immediately move to proving ourselves right. Yeah, but one day down the street, someone removed from my second cousin, it happened to them. It was on the internet. Okay. Our brain doesn't discern between fact, opinion, hypothesis, and speculation. It's all data.
I think the reason why that is because you have to go to school for a really long time in order to be a scientist. Like, we're not born scientists. What we're actually born is really bad lawyers. So we can decide
yourselves right.
Yeah, we can decide too quickly which side of the argument we're on, then we seek only the evidence that proves ourselves correct. So get this, Mike. I don't think that you've read Super Forecasting yet. Am I right? Okay, so that was written by Philip Tetlock. So Philip Tetlock, I believe, is a Nobel laureate out of University of Pennsylvania. He wrote the book Super Forecasting because in the second Iraq War, there was a giant black eye on the intelligence community. So what the Defense Department did in order to encourage innovation in the defense industry was they created DARPA. So it's a if I understand it correctly, it's an award that you win for innovation as a defense contractor. Like, can you out defense the Defense Department? So Philip Tetlock is now in the running for something called the IARPA Award. So the CIA shoplifted DARPA, created the intelligence community's version of it in order to increase innovation, and Philip Tetlock won the inaugural IARPA Award. That's what the book Super Forecasting is about. Fascinating thing, this is the best part of the whole book, was he actually extended it out to all the famous forecasters, all the talking heads, and then studied their performance. And it turns out there was a perfectly negative correlation between how popular the talking head was and how inaccurate they were. It had an absolute negative correlation for accuracy in forecasting. So there's a few things like Holly knows the Bolio brothers. So picture, they're kind of like Vistage's darling of the day economists. But why don't you tell me what you told me before we started recording, Holly?
Well, economists in general are more likely to be wrong than right. And anyone with deep knowledge in a sector, I always tell clients, the longer you've worked in this sector, the more you know about how it should be, how it must be. And the less likely you are to innovate, the less likely you are to do anything different because you can prove that's always worked, etc. And there was a study done, and I have to go back and look because it's been more than 5 years, but I think it was Stanford did the study. Economists are more likely to be wrong than the average man on the street about the economy, but they are better at proving why they were wrong, at justifying why they were wrong. Okay. And we find that with many things, with many experts that tell us this. You could go back and look at predictive models about let's get political, about climate change, about COVID, about anything you want to look at. Go back and look at the predictive models. Every one of them is dead wrong.
Yeah, there's a thing of
wrong, right? But we're good at that.
So I opened my presentations with a line that I came up with just to get people a little bit more humble, like exemplify epistemic humility. What I do is I have them write down. I've written out most of it in the handout, but I say mastery of the mind starts with moral humility. It strengthens with accumulated knowledge, but it culminates with surrender. And it's surrendering to the fact that we will never master our minds. It was designed in the Pleistocene to navigate the lifelong camping trip that was our ancestors' environment. So we're fraught with all sorts of foibles. So how do we stay in a cycle of epistemic humility by pointing the critical finger in the right direction? And frankly, when a room full of dominant personalities like CEOs, man, what's wild, Holly, like, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but I used to, once I got to about 100 presentations a year, I was experiencing a male version of arrogance where they would yell at me. One person out of, let's say, 8 presentations. So let's say it's 1 in 80, 1 in 160 CEOs would yell at me and go, "It's not like that." And it was always a dude. That, I think, since the Me Too movement has thankfully gone the way of the dodo. men don't yell at me anymore when they disagree or assume what I'm saying to them isn't accurate. So despite the fact it's been vetted by, tons of people in the industry. I have noticed, though, female arrogance is on the rise, and I'm not sure why that is. So it's kind of an interesting thing to me that when I see it, it's like I had a woman in the Research Triangle in North Carolina. When I asked the question, what's the country that's had the greatest advancements in female empowerment in the last decade? She screamed at me, top of her lungs, it's not the United States. It was like a 10 on the tension scale. So now I use her as a cautionary tale because I wasn't going to confront her. You can't win that argument. So the deal is now I sit back and I just turn to the audience and is like, do you think that woman was open to being wrong? So it's like, how do we get to a point where we're more open to being wrong when, frankly, social media has loosened or let loose these demons in our society that I could go so far as to say I think society is committing suicide as a result of it. We're jumping way too quickly to that we're right because we can find a cohort of people online that tell us we're right. This, I believe, is the reason why the Flat Earth Society has more membership today than they did in 1957 when they were first formed. It's like a special type of stupid, an idiotic echo chamber. Let's call it that.
One of my mantras is we're better at proving ourselves right than any other single thing we do as a human. And I have access to more data than I ever have, and I have access to it faster, easier than I ever have. So I can find some iota somewhere that proves I'm right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if 99% of the data says I'm wrong. And we see it every day in politics. We see it every day in religion. We see it every day, in climate activism. We see it every day around us in a myriad of ways. And it has been certainly volumized, if you will. Social media helps with all of that, unquestionably. And our ability to do it anonymously also is a huge factor.
Yeah.
So I don't have to alienate myself to do this anymore. I can still be part of everything, and sort of shout from the rooftop whatever opinion I have that I'm positive is truth.
Yeah, and I think back to what you really earlier talking about The Economist, especially with the Bolio brothers themselves. I don't know if you know this, but they've got a theory out right now that we're headed for a depression.
Well, they've had that for about 6 years, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because what I do is I have to remind the audiences, no, the original year was 2028. And then when we got closer to it, they moved it to 2029. And then when we got closer to that, they moved it to 2030. So I'm convinced they're going to retire in 2029. So this way no one can call them out on it. That the argument is really this. So my first book, this one, it's been 4 years as the highest rated econometrics book on Amazon, and it sold 2,000 total copies. Like whoop-de-doo, right? You don't write a book for 3 years to sell 2,000 copies. It's like the bare minimum, right? So what did I do wrong with it? I don't have a scary title.
That's right.
So I just rewrote this book, added 4 chapters on the population collapse that Peter Zion's talking about, and the argument against how the Bolio brothers are actually wrong. They're not right about the ingredients, but they're wrong about the results. And then so what I said.
But that's why that is at the core, Mark, is because economists believe people are logical, and so they run logic and create models. And we're not. If we were logical, we would not buy brand name jeans for 5 times the price of not brand name jeans made on the same piece of equipment. We are not. I would not drink Diet Coke, but I worked at the Coca-Cola company. You're never going to convince me to drink a Pepsi under any circumstances for any reason whatsoever. And that is completely illogical behavior. Right. And I know that, and it doesn't matter. So that's the problem with economists. And that's why Daniel Kahneman, when he wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow and won the Nobel Prize in economics for it, even though he's a behavioral scientist, is because he based on science, really exposed what he calls system 1, system 2. We make emotional, illogical decisions and then validate them with logic.